In this video, I'm going to show you how you could do this much damage and have some of the best mob clearing you can have as a Necromancer in Diablo 4. This build is seriously one of the strongest Necromancer builds out there, and it combines all of the best of everything bone to make a critical strike masterpiece of a build. I made it and tested it myself live on Twitch, so you should stop by sometime. Later in this video, we're going to review the Paragon choices, the aspect choices, the alternate build varieties, and the playstyle of the build. But first, I have to show you what abilities you're picking. So let's start down here. For abilities, we're going to start by putting 3 points into Reap for Alkalight's Reap. Now this is my comfort starter ability, as it allows me to guarantee a corpse for corpse tendrils to do its job. But it is easily replaceable with Bone Splinters if you want the full bone fantasy, as you can generate corpses with passives. Our second tier has us maxing Bone Spear into Paranormal Bone Spear, so we can clear easier mobs and generate corpses for the rest of the build. Also, Hewed Flesh and Unliving Energy are both maxed out. For our third row, we're starting with 3 points in Blood Mist level to Ghastly for survivability, 3 points in Bone Prison level to Ghastly for essence regeneration and vulnerability, 1 point in Grim Harvest, and finally, finishing with 3 points into Fueled by Death. Row 4 is simply put, 3 points in Death's Embrace. Moving on. Row 5 has us putting 3 points in Corpse Tendrils leveled up to Blighted, and this is crucial as it gets us our surplus of our Blood Orbs, which we need. Bone Spirit is the main course of this dish, getting fully leveled into Ghastly Bone Spirit for the crit bonus, and 3 points are awarded to the top, right, and bottom bone passives in this tier. The final row includes Memento Mori and Standalone with 3 points in each of those, followed by 3 points into Bone Storm to max it out, and our final point goes into our key passive being Ossified Essence, which increases our crit with the bone even more. This build is designed to have nuclear critical strikes, and these abilities are supplemented by the Paragon board, so without delay, let's get into it. Now, I won't tell you where each point should be placed, but you can instead pause and copy for each board after I've told you which board and glyph you'll be needing. This board complements our aspects well, so stick around to see which aspects we're going to be using and why. Now, our starter board has a lot of dexterity options, making it an excellent choice for the glyph exploit, which allows us to use all of our extra dexterity on extra vulnerable damage. The next board is Bone Graft, and this is supplemented by Sacrificial, which gives us 10% flat damage and buffs the very great magic nodes that surround the glyph, which gives us a crowd control damage buff that revolves around our corpse tendrils, and I very much enjoy it. On Scent of Death, we've placed Essence as our glyph, since there's plenty of dexterity options to stack up our crit damage by a ton. And lastly, we have Blood Begets Blood, in which we've placed Blood Drinker, which fortifies us when using Blood Orbs. That's a lot of blood. It also buffs the magic nodes surrounding it, which is a great help in this spot. Before I go into the aspects, I want to add 3 key additional notes on the overall setup for this build. Firstly, for gems, very simple. We're going to be using Ruby in our armor and Emerald in our weapons. Ruby gives us health, the Emerald gives us vulnerability damage. Both of those help our build massively. Secondly, for our Malignant Hearts, we're going to be using 2 orange hearts and 1 black Wrathful Heart. The 2 orange hearts are the Heart of the Sacrilegious and the Heart of the Tempting Fate. These will each respectively increase our crit damage substantially and use our corpse abilities for us without us having to cast it, saving us not only resource cost but also time. The Wrathful Heart we're going to be using is the one everyone expects. It is the Heart of the Barber, which will stack our damage to pop a large finishing crit. The one note I do want to make for that is that although the Barber is a very popular heart, this build completely revolves around doing large critical strike bonuses, and so the Heart of the Barber actually works fundamentally in this build to make it function. Third and finally, we're sacrificing all minions. Skirmishers for crit chance, Cold Mages for vulnerable damage, and the Iron Golem for that sweet, sweet crit chance. For our aspects, I'll start by covering the traditional build, and then in the meanwhile, I'll go over some alternate varieties that boast higher survivability, but lacks in a little bit of damage to compensate for it. Starting off with our helmet, we're going to be needing the aspect of the Embalmer. This lets us spawn blood orbs whenever we consume corpses. Our chest piece is one of 4 potential uniques this build will use, but it is the most non-negotiable and massively important. This allows us to turn our blood orbs into nuclear missiles by way of sending out free bone spirits. Our gloves will be giving us the splintering aspect. This buffs our bone spear, allowing it to apply vulnerable to those it hits. Our pants can be one of two options. Firstly, we have the unique Temerity, which paired with our blood orbs allows us to get quite the barrier build for ourselves. The second is the aspect of Shielding Storm, which gives us a ton of survivability while using our alt. For the traditional build, the one that this guide basically represents, both of these pieces will work, but if you want the additional survivability option, you'll want to stick with the second aspect, and I'll cover that in a little bit. For our boots, we're going to simply just use a looting aspect, giving us general higher survivability. Our weapon choices are where we get our larger differences when it comes to our build variety. For the traditional build, again the one for this video, we'll be running aspect of Grasping Veins on a two-handed sword for our max crit damage, and this aspect allows for corpse tendrils to guarantee our crit chance, which we absolutely need. For the survivability option, you'll still run this same aspect, just on a one-handed sword, and for your offhand, you'll use the unique shield, Lidless Wall. This allows your survivability build to completely abuse the extra augments that do revolve around Bone Storm. For our rings, we're using two, the aspect of Exposed Flesh to gain resource back on vulnerable hits, and Mother's Embrace, another unique for the other ring. It keeps us mostly filled on our resource permanently. Again, a small little note, if you are building towards the survivability build, you're going to want to swap Mother's Embrace for Osseous Gale aspect, which eats up corpses to keep Bone Storm going around longer. Finally, our neck piece is going to have aspect of Serration. This gives us additional crit with the additional resource on our key passive. And again, this is just important to get those gigantic bone booms. Instructions need visuals. So, in this next segment, I'm going to show you beyond a shadow of a doubt how to play this build and its variation. For abilities, I run Blood Mist on Q, Bone Prison on W, Bone Spear on E, Bone Storm on R, Reap on my mouse click 1, and Corpse Tendrils on my mouse click 2. Getting started, there's only one real maximize your damage setup, which is the following. Start by using Reap to generate a corpse, and then cast Corpse Tendrils. If you don't cast it, chances are it's going to cast on its own because of the passive with the Malignant Heart. Then, you want to use Bone Storm on yourself and Bone Prison on the grouped enemies. From here, we're going to go ahead and Bone Spear the group, and they should really all pop with the Heart of the Barber. By moving through them, you're going to absorb those blood orbs. That not only grants you survivability and health, but it begins sending nuclear bone spirits in the direction of any and all enemies that remain, and any and all enemies that are approaching. For our alternate build version, everything basically remains the same, but Bone Storm lasts much longer, it spreads around with Lidless Wall, and it consumes corpses, summoning blood orbs everywhere, and summoning many more bone spirits. This is a tiny bit clunkier overall though, as you will eat the corpses, preventing you from casting Corpse Tendrils in large packs and groups. And that's the build. This build has no problem beating Nightmare dungeons in the 70 to 80 sigil range solo, and does devastating damage. Its only real weakness is single target, and even that is mitigated with the Heart of the Barber and Bone Spear. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it if you made it this far. Comment below what you want to see me try in upcoming videos. I'm looking for ideas, and I'll make sure to test as much as I can. Until next time, see ya.